Hello, and welcome to the first video of this channel. Today, we have a story from r/no sleep. Big shout out to Heineke for allowing me to narrate their story. My family had one rule: never raise your voice at home. Also, all the lovely art that's accompanying the story is done by Studio Bumbles, also known as B. A link to the story as well as B's channel will be in the description below. Please go show them love. So, without further ado, this is My Family Had One Rule: Never Raise Your Voice at Home. I'm sure some people will be able to relate to this. My childhood was odd. At the time, I couldn't see that there was anything wrong with it. I couldn't understand it when things happened that weren't normal. I went to school, had friends, and played games just like any other kid. I had loving parents and an annoying sister, just like many other kids my age did. My grandparents, aunts, and uncles would often visit. I didn't like when my grandmother came. She was a strict woman, and honestly, she scared me. I can remember vividly one summer she came over. She looked my sister and I up and down, then turned to my father and asked, "What about the other one? I thought you said, get it over with and end this farce." He pulled her aside and told my sister and I to go play outside. She left that night and never came to visit again. There are so many things that I never learned should be questioned. I never comprehended that they were something I should question. Most of them felt small at the time. We had a picture of our family tree in our hallway, a long line of sibling pairs as far back as anyone remembered. And yet, by each of them was a space for a third. My mother would bring in extra groceries every trip, and sometimes set an extra plate at dinner, then quietly put it away again. But there was one rule that we were never to break. We weren't allowed to speak at home. Rather, we weren't allowed to raise our voices above a whisper. Whether in anger, laughter, or even by accident, loudness in general was treated as taboo as soon as we set foot on the driveway. On the few occasions we raised our voices, our father's anger always fell hardest on me. My sister cried, but she was spared. I didn't understand why my mother never comforted either of us until much later, and it cost me far more than I would have been willing to trade. I really want to emphasize that this was always the norm to me. I didn't understand what it meant. I didn't know I should be worried or scared. Despite this, like I mentioned earlier, I did have a good childhood. My parents truly loved us both, and it was rare that we got into trouble. I had a lot of friends at school, and I'd often spend the majority of my day at one of their houses, playing PS2 or taking advantage of their trampoline, which I had always been envious of. My dad didn't like it. Anytime I wanted to get permission for a playdate or a sleepover, I would ask my mom. This would be followed by tense, coarse whispers between the two of them in their room. Sometimes they'd let me, other times not. Hindsight truly is a taunting thing. I can't tell you how many nights I've spent lying awake wishing my dad had won those hushed arguments. I wish to myself as I toss and turn that I hadn't been born to my parents, that I hadn't been born at all. But even more vicious than hindsight is the past itself. It stands with absolute resoluteness. It is unchangeable and unforgettable, a wound that never heals until the day the afflicted passes away. Siblings are supposed to be mean to each other when they're young. It's part of how they grow up, how they learn social skills. So when my friend suggested we scare my sister during a sleepover, I was immediately on board. I wasn't allowed to have friends over at our house, but I told them I could record it all and show them the next day. I was beyond excited to have something to rub in my sister's face. She was the eldest, and I wanted to get the upper hand on her for once. As any little girl would, she screamed when she saw the rubber snake under her pillow. It wasn't a long scream. She covered her mouth with her hands as soon as it left her lips, but it was enough. There was a moment of silence right after she screamed that felt never ending. Then my parents ran into the room. They saw her, mouth still covered and eyes wide with terror. Then the toy snake on her bed. My father cursed under his breath before scooping up my sister into his arms. My mother looked like she was going to cry. Her eyes darted down even before the noises began. Scratching. Something was scratching the wooden floor underneath her feet. Light at first, soft, almost as if it was asking to be let in politely. Then, louder, louder and louder until it was violently clawing away the wood like tissue paper. The boards bent first, bowing upwards as if the house itself were breathing. Then they split, splinters flying, and something began to crawl through. When my father saw what had emerged from below our feet, he set my sister down and stepped away. All he said was, "I'm sorry." He didn't sound angry. He didn't sound afraid. Just tired, like he'd been waiting for this, as if he had expected it. It was small. We had raccoons in our backyard that my sister and I would try to catch. At that moment, that's the only size comparison I could think of. It crawled on its hands and knees, bloated and red as if its skin was being pulled taut over too much of its own body. A putrid, fleshy cord dangled over its shoulders, coiling around its neck before disappearing into its own swollen belly. How could something so sickly, so small, be so strong? Its eyes locked onto my sister, and I jumped between the two. My mother cried out, "No!" Before either of my parents could move, the rotten child seized my ankle and hurled me across the room as if I were a toy soldier. I hit the wall. My mom came over to pick me up, both shielding and restraining me. But even if I had broken free, it wouldn't have mattered. In seconds, it had her. My sister's nails scraped across the floorboards. Her muffled cry cut short as the thing dragged her into the hole below. I heard her scream again, but this time, it wasn't her hands that silenced it. The sound of flesh being torn from sinew, ligaments snapping, bones breaking. Then, her voice called out again. "Mom, Dad." It pulled itself back up from the darkness. The sight of it now forced me to vomit on the floor. It was bigger, but wrong. Its arms and legs were uneven. Its hands a clutter of mismatched fingers, as though it had been playing with bones the way a child plays with toys, jamming them into place, trying to look like my sister. Patches of her brown hair sprouted from swollen red skin, clumps of it slick with blood. Her white teeth were crammed into its gray gums, sharp and uneven, like butcher knives buried in raw meat. But worst of all were the eyes. They were her eyes. I could still see the fear they held only moments ago, the betrayal and terror she had experienced. My father scooped my sister up in his arms and carried her out of the room. I could hear her monstrous, joyful cries as she tried to use her new, stolen voice. The rest of my childhood was spent pretending the monster had always been my sister. Pretending that her laugh was hers, that her smile was hers. I was punished more harshly for mistreating her than I ever was for breaking the rule of silence. I moved out when I turned 16 and continued my game of pretend. I pretended my childhood never happened, that I was a normal man with a normal past and a normal family. Only one thing brings me comfort now. No matter how much my parents beg, and plead and yell and berate. I will never have children. This ends with me, and it ends with her. And that's the end of the story. My family had one rule: never raise your voice at home. Again, big shout out to Heineke for allowing me to narrate their story, and Studio Bumbles for the art. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and please consider subscribing if you enjoy these stories. I've been Knox, and I will catch you in the next one.